Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, every June 14th is World Blood Donor Day, and it's celebrated throughout the world. Officially designated as an annual event by the World Health Organization and World Health Assembly, in 2005, the day provides a special opportunity to celebrate and thank voluntary blood donors around the world for their gift of blood. The day has even become a major focus for action towards achieving universal access to safe blood transfusion.
In many countries, blood services face the challenge of making sufficient blood available while also ensuring its quality and safety. Lack of access to safe blood and blood products, especially in low and middle income countries, impacts on all patients, including those requiring regular transmission or transfusion. The theme for this year's celebration is Give Blood, Give Plasma, Share Life, Share Often. Now, to discuss this further, joining us this morning is Bukola Bolarinwa. She's the founder of Haima Health Initiative. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Bukola, there's so many reasons why, the conversations about blood donation and blood transfusion. But would like you, as a founder of the Haima Health Initiative, talk to us about why this day is important and what your organization does in terms of celebrating World Blood Donor Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So this day is extremely important because it's an opportunity to thank people that give blood voluntarily and regularly, as well as all the people that work across the blood space. Blood is something that cannot be manufactured in the lab. The only way that blood can be gotten is if somebody donates it to somebody else. And it's an opportunity to raise awareness on how important it is for people to give blood if they can. There's so many different types of patients that rely on blood transfusions to live. And that includes people that live with chronic conditions like sickle cell disease, as well as different types of cancers, but also for women who are giving birth, neonatal situations of newborn babies, and then obviously accidents and emergencies. So there are loads of classes of patients that rely on blood, and we only can get blood if people donate.
What are some of the struggles with getting people to donate here in Africa, mostly in Nigeria? I understand that there is some stigma. There is every now and then that there is maybe some accident or some disaster. I can see the calls for donations of blood donation basically, but it doesn't seem to be a very, very interesting drive here in Africa. So what might be going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much things that are kind of hindering people from donating blood. I think number one is actually the awareness and letting people know that it's actually an essential activity for people to do. And like with this year's theme, it's talking about people giving often, because another challenge that we often face is that people sometimes give once, and in Africa generally, people tend to give to their relatives or people that they know. So for example, if you get a call that your friend or an acquaintance is in need of blood, people are more likely to donate. But there is kind of a hesitancy for people to just donate generally to people that they don't know, or make it like a regular habit, so that if you're donating every 3-4 months, somebody somewhere is relying on that blood. So for us, it's raising that awareness that blood donation isn't a one-time activity, isn't something that you only do to people that you know, or when you get a call from a friend. It's something that you should make a habit and make it as regular as possible.
This opportunity to debunk some of the myths surrounding blood donation, as well as talk about the do's and don'ts regarding blood donation. So what would you say are some of the most popular myths you like to use this opportunity to debunk, and then share with us, the process one needs to go through for blood donation?
Yeah, I think the biggest myth and challenge that we constantly face is people saying that people sell blood, right? In the sense that if you go to a hospital to access blood, you will have to pay for it. However, when somebody gives blood, we encourage voluntary blood donation, which means that we encourage people to give blood for free. And so there's kind of that mismatch that if I give my blood for free, why is it that if a patient requires it in the hospital, they have to pay? And so we always try to use this opportunity to tell people that when you give blood, it cannot be transfused in that exact form to the patient. So many processes have to go through. So it has to be tested, it has to be screened. Oftentimes it has to be stored in refrigerated conditions. It has to be transported to the patient in whichever hospital that they are. So there's a lot of processes that go in between when you donate blood and when the patient accesses it. So understanding that those costs, in order for you to have safe blood, they have to be costs, and there's nowhere where there's free blood. So it's very important for people to understand that that kind of mismatch and that disconnect. In terms of eligibility, Anybody who's healthy between the ages of 18 and up to 70 can donate blood if they've been donating before, as long as you don't have kind of like any serious medical conditions or are not on any particular medications. Most people are safe to donate blood. It's a very simple process. You just fill out a form, you're screened with basic questions, and then you give blood. It usually takes between 10 to 15 minutes, and it's something that can literally save people's lives.
Are there certain blood groups that are most sought after? Are there any things like that, that are also part of the conversation? There are certain blood people who should also, I mean, it's pretty important for everyone to know their blood group. So, are there certain blood groups that are also very highly sought after, in your time,
Yeah, I mean,
doing
O
this?
negative and universal donors are obviously the most sought after, but most people don't actually know their blood group. It's something that, again, we're advocating for because on the Nigerian driver's license, it actually requires you to state what your blood group is, but most people just put O positive just because it is the most common blood group. Actually, for a lot of patients, for a lot of people, the first time they know their blood group is when they need blood and they're in the hospital and they need to access it, and then they're kind of scrambling around to do a test and know it. So, but we encourage everybody to donate because everybody needs blood. There isn't a particular group that will say, "Oh, you set of people, please give more." As long as you're healthy and you're fit, we need your blood. We don't discriminate when it comes to blood groups.
I'd like you to walk us through the process of blood donation for a first-time blood donor. So somebody who's watching this and says, "Okay, I'd like to try it out." What are the things they need to note?
And how long does it
Yeah,
take for them to get their blood back?
their blood back. They're not getting their blood back. The thing is, like, for a first time donor, we would encourage you to go to our website, which is heimahealth.org.ng, and register as a voluntary donor. We'll send you information on when we're having various blood drives. We also reach out to people in terms of emergencies. For example, when there was the recent train accident a few months ago, we will send out an emergency call and say, hey, if you're around this area, I would love you to come and donate. When you come to the site to donate, you fill out a questionnaire. We'll ask you some basic questions about your health history. If you've ever had anything like major surgeries, for example, we'll go through those questions with you. If you're eligible, you lie down on a bench, and then it will be a small prick into a vein, usually in the arm. And then you'll give about 1 pint, which is about one sachet of pure water size of blood. We're not allowed to take more than 1 pint of blood. And a man can give every 3 months, which means 4 times a year, and a woman can give every 4 months, which means 3 times a year. The reason there's a disparity is because women have monthly periods, which usually means that they lose a little bit more blood on a monthly basis than men. So men can give more often than women. And so it's a very painless and quick process. And for anybody who hasn't done it before, we'll encourage you to give it a try.
Okay, and what do they screen for, just before you get tested? That's one
Yeah,
question.
there's a list of diseases, so things like hepatitis, HIV, syphilis, and things like that. So there's a list of diseases that all blood has to be screened for before it is considered safe. If you're a donor and you give blood, for example, we'll screen you and then tell you after you've done the donation if we do discover that there's any particular thing in your blood.
All right. Now, today is World Blood Donor Day, the 14th of June, but in another 5 days, we have World Sickle Cell Day. And there is a relationship between blood donation and, sickle cell. And you've, talked about this quite briefly. I'd like you to shed more light on the relationship between these two major celebrations, the World Blood Donor Day and the World Sickle Cell Day.
Yeah, thank you, Olive. Absolutely. And part of the reason that I do what the advocacy around blood donations, because I myself also live with sickle cell disease, and a lot of patients who have sickle cell disease need regular blood transfusions. Sometimes every 6 weeks, and we do something called a red cell exchange, which means you might need up to 12 pints of blood at the same time. So imagine needing 12 pints of blood every 6 weeks. That's 12 different people have to give blood to one person every 6 weeks. And it's something that a lot of people living with chronic conditions struggle with, right? Because it's at some point you exhaust your immediate circle, because after a while, everybody that you know has given blood for you. And so it then means that people rely on voluntary blood donations. So there's so many diseases like sickle cell that are chronic, which means that for the rest of your life, you're going to be relying on blood transfusion. And that's why this year's theme of Give Blood, Give Plasma, Share Life, Share Often is very important, because unlike previous years, we're highlighting that for some people, blood donation is their source of life. It is something that they rely on a day-to-day basis in order to live, or sometimes every couple of weeks. And so we need people to really step up and understand that this simple act of giving blood can sustain certain types of people for the rest of their lives.
All right, we've talked about the individual and how much work the individual can do, or how individuals can participate. Let's talk about governments on the continent. How can are there policies that have been established to encourage blood donation? Are there other legislation or other policies that should be encouraged or should be introduced to support the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally blood donation is often tied to the socioeconomic condition of a country, right? The better a country is socioeconomically, the more people are willing to give blood voluntarily. So if you look at, for example, Nigeria, if people are struggling with the basics, right, which is like transporting themselves, feeding themselves, the thought or the concept of giving blood voluntarily will be very difficult to sell and will be very difficult for people to understand. In order for you to even have the time or the kind of mental fortitude to think about giving blood, there are certain basics that have to be sorted out. So security, for example, electricity, things like that. And so it has to be like a holistic challenge. We have to also obviously talk about the challenges within the healthcare sector, the funding of the healthcare sector. If someone goes to give blood, for example, and the general environment of the hospital is not welcoming, it's not pleasing to the eye, it might not be clean, they're understaffed, they definitely will not come back. And so that's something that we struggle with. If blood donors go to give blood at a blood donation center or to a hospital and they have a negative experience, it's very difficult for us to get them to come back again to give blood. And so we need the government to look at the healthcare sector and look at the general broader socioeconomic sector and kind of make it as easy as possible for people to be able to do this.
Yeah. I also want to, know if you would join the advocacy, to stop the stigma against Edo people that fly. Because sometimes we're just trying to go donate blood, get some blood, to donate. But,
Wow.
I'm joking. But I want to ask about religious and, mostly religious, beliefs and cultural beliefs, that are also standing against blood donation. I know that there are, I think, certain churches that when a person needs blood donation to stay alive, their religion doesn't allow that. So talk a little bit about that.
Honestly, that's a very big challenge, and it's a great point. And it's not even the kind of religions that you're thinking. I know that I don't want to mention certain names, but even certain big churches in Nigeria, we've approached them, for example, and said, "Hey, we'd love to host a blood drive with you," and they'll say, "Oh." What they told us was that whoever needs the blood, they should come to us and we'll pray for them and they'll be healed. So we meet all sorts of kind of barriers and hear all sorts of reasons why people feel like giving blood is taboo in either their socioeconomic setting or in their church or in their religious organization. And it's something that we're constantly raising awareness about and building advocacy around. And for us, it's really a shame that sometimes the leaders of some of these religious organizations are pushing this type of agenda because they're really in a position to change the way things are. What we found is that if we approach a religious organization, say for example a mosque, and the imam or the leader of that mosque is interested in blood donation, what you find is that generally the congregation will be willing to give. So they're looking to the leadership of these religious organizations to be able to tell them that, hey, doing this activity is safe, it's saving lives, and it's extremely important. And so we use a day like this to really appeal to different types of religious organizations to kind of end the stigma around blood donation, both giving and receiving.
So much work needs to be done. Bukola Bolarinwa, thank you very much for highlighting this, and we look forward to joining this conversation even beyond the World Blood Donor Day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, it's been a very interesting conversation, a challenging one as well, and we do hope that that would help you to sit back, think, and see what ways can you aid the shortage of blood that the continent suffers from time to time.
Yeah.
Let's go on a quick break, and we'll come back to talk about sports.